My mother-in-law said I wasn't family enough for their trip, so I taught her a lesson she'll never forget. I sat at the polished mahogany dining table, my hands folded tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. The air in my in-laws' house always smelled of expensive potpourri and judgment. Before you find out what happens next, hit the subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We want to see just how far this life-changing story can reach. Tonight it was particularly suffocating. My mother-in-law, Victoria, sat at the head of the table, looking like a queen holding court. My husband, James, sat beside me, but he was busy scrolling on his phone, oblivious to the tension radiating off me. "So," Victoria announced, clapping her manicured hands together. "The summer trip. We finally decided. We're going to the Amalfi Coast. 2 weeks in a private villa. It's going to be absolutely divine." She beamed at her daughter, Chloe, and her husband, who were sitting opposite us. "Chloe, you must start looking for swimsuits for the twins. The pool is infinity edge overlooking the sea." I smiled politely, waiting for the details. I had been saving my vacation days for months, anticipating this family trip. James and I had talked about Italy for years. "That sounds amazing, Victoria," I said. "What dates are we looking at? I need to put in my request at work." Victoria's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went cold. She took a sip of her wine, savoring the moment. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "I didn't think you'd be able to come. The villa only sleeps 10 comfortably, and with the grandkids and the nanny, well, we're at capacity." I blinked, confused. "Capacity?" I repeated. "But James is going, right?" "Of course James is going," Victoria said, looking at my husband. "He needs a break. He works so hard." He turned back to me. "But you know how it is, dear. You've only been married for 2 years. And honestly, with your background, I just don't think you'd enjoy the formal dinners we have planned. It's a very family trip. You understand." My background. That was code for you grew up poor. My parents were teachers. I went to state school. I worked as a graphic designer. To Victoria, whose family money was older than the country, I was a temporary fixture, a mistake James would eventually correct. "I'm James's wife," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Doesn't that make me family?" Victoria laughed, a light tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, legally yes. But family is about history, Sarah. It's about fitting in. And frankly, you're just a little stiff. You don't relax. You worry about prices. It ruins the vibe." She waved her hand dismissively. "Besides, James agrees. Don't you, darling?" I turned to James. He finally looked up from his phone, sensing the danger. Well," he stammered, avoiding my eyes. "Mom thinks it might be better if I go solo this time. Just to reconnect with the roots. We can do a weekend trip somewhere else later. Maybe camping? You love camping." "Camping." He was trading the Amalfi Coast for a tent in a muddy field because he was too cowardly to stand up to his mother. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. "So," I said slowly, "I'm not family enough for the villa. But I'm family enough to host Thanksgiving? To buy your birthday gifts? To nurse you when you had surgery last year?" Victoria sighed, looking bored. "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. It's just a vacation. You're making a scene. This is exactly why you weren't invited. You take everything so personally." She turned to Chloe. "Now about the boat rental." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I'm not making a scene," I said, grabbing my purse. "I'm leaving." James stood up too. "Sir, wait. Don't be like that." "Like what?" I snapped. "Like a wife who expects her husband to defend her? Enjoy Italy, James. Don't forget to pack your spine." I walked out of the house, my heels clicking on the marble foyer. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. They thought I was weak. They thought I would just take it, mope for a week, and then welcome James back with open arms. They were wrong. Victoria wanted to teach me my place. Fine. I would teach her a lesson she would never forget. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, not yet. A real estate lawyer. Victoria had a secret. A secret she thought was buried deep in the family archives. The massive estate she lived in, the manor, that had been in the family for 4 generations? It wasn't actually hers. Technically, the title belonged to a holding company set up by her late grandfather. And the controlling shares of that company had been left to his estranged brother, my great-uncle. I had discovered this purely by accident while helping my dad sort through old papers a few months ago. I hadn't said anything because it seemed irrelevant. But now it was the only thing that mattered. I tracked down my great-uncle Arthur. He was 90, living in a nursing home in Florida, and had absolutely no interest in that stuck-up branch of the family. When I visited him and explained the situation, he laughed so hard he wheezed. "Victoria," he cackled. "That little witch. She treats that house like a palace. You say you can get it back?" "I don't want the house, Uncle Arthur," I said. "I just want to be the landlord." Arthur's eyes twinkled. He signed the power of attorney over to me that afternoon. "Give her hell, kid," he whispered. "For all of us." I spent the next 2 weeks quietly transferring the assets. I set up a new LLC, Amalfi Holdings. I hired a property management firm. I made sure every piece of paperwork was ironclad. James was busy packing for Italy, barely speaking to me, assuming I was cooling off. The day they left for the airport, I was at work. James texted me, "Taking off now. See you in 2 weeks. Love you." I didn't reply. I just forwarded a document to my property manager. Subject: Notice of lease termination and rent increase. The manor had been occupied by Victoria under a sweetheart family lease of $1 a year, established decades ago. But the lease had a clause. It could be reviewed upon change of ownership or management. And since Amalfi Holdings was the new manager, the review was immediate. I set the new rent at market value. For a 10-bedroom historic estate in that zip code, that was $25,000 a month. Plus arrears for the last 5 years of unauthorized renovations Victoria had done without permit approvals from the trust. The total bill came to roughly $1.5 million, due in 30 days. Or she could vacate. I imagined the scene. Victoria sipping Aperol spritzes on a balcony in Positano, receiving a registered letter via international courier. It arrived 3 days into their trip. My phone blew up at 4 a.m. It was James. "Sarah, pick up. Mom is hyperventilating." I let it go to voicemail. Then Victoria called. Then Chloe. Then James again. I silenced my phone, rolled over, and went back to sleep. I had a busy day ahead. I was planning my own trip. I finally answered James the next day during my lunch break. "What is going on?" he screamed. "Mom got a letter evicting her." "Who is Amalfi Holdings? You have to help us. You work in legal stuff." I was a graphic designer, but James thought anything with contracts was legal stuff. "Amalfi Holdings?" I asked innocently. "That sounds Italian. Maybe it's a sign." "This isn't funny, Sarah," James yelled. "They want millions. Mom is talking about cutting the trip short. You have to look into this." "I can't," I said. "I'm not family enough to be involved in family business. Remember." "Sarah, please," James begged. "She's crying. She says they're going to take the house." "Well," I said, "that's how renting works, James. If you don't own the dirt, you're just a tenant. Isn't that what you told me about my apartment?" "You know something," James accused. His voice dropped. "Sarah, did you do this?" "Me?" I laughed. "I'm just a graphic designer. I don't have that kind of power. But I do know a good real estate lawyer. Maybe you should call him." "Oh wait, his retainer is $5,000. Does Victoria have liquidity?" They flew back early. The divine vacation lasted 4 days. They came straight to my house. Well, our house, which I paid half the mortgage on. Victoria looked 10 years older. Her tan was splotchy. She marched into my living room. "You," she hissed. "Arthur told me. He told me he signed it over to you." I sat in my favorite armchair drinking tea. "Hello, Victoria. How was Italy? Did you get to the Blue Grotto?" "Cut the crap," she spat. "You stole my house." "I didn't steal anything," I said calmly. "I inherited the management rights. And as the new manager, I realized the current tenant was underperforming." "You can't do this," James said, standing beside his mother. "Sarah, this is my mom. You can't charge her market rent. She's retired." "She has a trust fund, James," I reminded him. "And she just spent 50 grand on a villa she didn't use. She can afford it." I won't pay, Victoria screamed. I'll sue you. You can try, I said. But the deed is clear. You've been living on charity for 40 years. My charity. And frankly, you haven't been a very grateful recipient. What do you want? Victoria asked, her voice trembling with rage. You want an apology? Is that it? Fine. I'm sorry I didn't invite you. They're happy. No, I said. I don't want an apology. I want respect. But since you can't give that, I'll take the rent. $25,000. Due on the 1st. I can't pay that, she wailed. Then you can move, I said. I hear there are some lovely condos in the city. Very cozy. Perfect for someone downsizing. James looked at me like I was a stranger. You're enjoying this, he whispered. You're actually enjoying hurting her. I'm enjoying justice, James, I said. She hurt me for sport. I'm just balancing the books. If you do this, James said, we're done. I can't be with someone who destroys my family. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He was still standing next to his mother, defending the woman who had belittled me for years. We were done the moment you got on that plane, James, I said. I just waited until you got back to tell you. Victoria moved out 2 months later. She downsized to a 3-bedroom townhouse. It was nice, but it wasn't the manor. She told everyone I was a gold digger and a thief. I didn't care. I rented the manor out for weddings. Made a fortune. I used the profits to pay for nursing care for Uncle Arthur. I visited him every month. We would drink iced tea and look at the checks coming in from Amalfi Holdings. Best decision I ever made, he would say. James tried to come back after 6 months. He realized that without his mother's estate, his inheritance wasn't quite what he thought it was. He missed my stability. He missed the way I managed his life. I met him for coffee. He looked tired. I miss you, Sarah, he said. Mom is driving me crazy. She complains about the townhouse constantly. I bet, I said. Can we try again? He asked. I'll stand up to her this time. I promise. I stirred my coffee. James, I said gently. You had your chance. You chose the villa. You chose the family. You can't come back just because the castle crumbled. I walked away from him feeling lighter than I had in years. I had lost a husband, but I had gained my dignity. And every time I deposited that rent check, I remembered the lesson. Family isn't about blood. It's about how you treat people. And if you treat them like they don't matter, don't be surprised when they realize they hold the keys to your kingdom. The divorce was messy but swift. James, still clinging to his mother's fading influence, tried to argue for spousal support. He claimed he had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, the irony of which made my lawyer laugh out loud in court. I kept the house we had bought together, buying out his share with the profits from the manor's first wedding season. He moved into the guest room of Victoria's townhouse. Uncle Arthur passed away peacefully a year later. He left everything to me. Not just the management rights but the entire trust. The manor, the stocks, the land. He bypassed Victoria completely, citing gross mismanagement of family assets in his will. When the reading happened, Victoria didn't scream. She just sat there, turning a ghostly shade of gray. She realized she had spent her entire life waiting for an inheritance that had just been handed to the outsider. I decided to renovate the manor. Not to live in, it was too big, too full of ghosts, but to turn it into a premier event venue. I hired a team of architects and designers. I wanted to strip away Victoria's stuffy, old-world pretension and bring in light, modern elegance. I called it the Arthur Estate. One afternoon, while overseeing the landscaping of the new rose garden, a car pulled up. It was Chloe. I hadn't seen my sister-in-law since the Amalfi incident. She got out of her Range Rover looking hesitant. "Hi, Sarah," she said, shielding her eyes from the sun. "It looks different." "Hi, Chloe," I said, wiping dirt from my hands. "We're opening up the sightlines. Arthur always hated those hedges." Chloe nodded, kicking at a pebble. "Look," she started. "I know things are bad. Mom is a nightmare. James is miserable. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I leaned on my shovel. "For what, specifically?" "For not standing up for you," she said. "For letting Mom treat you like help. I was scared of her too, you know. He controls everything. Or she used to." "She controlled the money," I corrected. "And now she doesn't." Exactly, Chloe said. And honestly, kind of a relief. She can't hold the inheritance over our heads anymore because there isn't one. She looked at me. I'm starting a catering business. Small. Just local events. I was wondering if you're looking for vendors for the venue. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't her mother. She was just another person who had been under Victoria's thumb. Is the food good? I asked. It's amazing, she smiled. And I give a family discount. I laughed. Send me a proposal, Chloe. But treat me like a client, not a sister-in-law. Business boomed. The Arthur estate became the most sought-after venue in the state. I was working harder than ever, but it was my work, my rules. I hired Chloe as one of our preferred caterers. She was excellent, organized, creative, and hardworking. We built a strange, tentative friendship over menu tastings and seating charts. One day, James showed up at the venue. He wasn't there for a wedding. He was there to see me. He looked better, he had lost weight, got a haircut. He walked into my office. Sarah, he said. I heard you're doing well. I am, I said, not looking up from my laptop. What do you want, James? I'm moving, he said. To Chicago. I got a job transfer. I can't stay in that townhouse anymore. She's impossible. He blames you for everything. For the weather, for the traffic, for her arthritis. He sighed. I just wanted to say goodbye. And to tell you, you were right. About everything. I softened just a fraction. Chicago is a good city, I said. You'll like it. Yeah, he said. Maybe I'll finally grow up there. He paused at the door. You know, she still waits for the mail every day. Hoping for a letter saying it was all a mistake. She'll be waiting a long time, I said. 2 years passed. I met someone new. His name was Daniel. He was an architect who specialized in historic preservation. We met when he consulted on the manor's roof repair. He didn't care about old money or social standing. He cared about structural integrity and kindness. We got married in the rose garden of the estate. It was a small, intimate ceremony. Chloe was there with her husband and kids. My parents were there, beaming. Victoria was not invited. I heard through Chloe that she spent the day indisposed with a migraine. Victoria's decline was slow and bitter. Without her grand estate to define her, she shrank. Her friends stopped calling once the parties stopped. She became just another elderly woman in a condo, complaining to the HOA board about noise. I paid for her nursing home when the time came. Not the luxurious one she wanted, but a nice, respectable facility. Chloe called me crying when she found out. You didn't have to do that, she said. After everything she did to you. I didn't do it for her, I said. I did it for Arthur. He wouldn't have wanted her on the street. He just wanted her humbled. One Christmas I visited the nursing home. Victoria was sitting in the common room staring out the window. She looked frail. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed, a flicker of the old fire returning. You, she croaked. The landlord. Hello, Victoria, I said, sitting down. How are you? The food here is terrible, she snapped. And the sheets are cotton, not linen. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. But it's warm. And safe. She looked at my hand. At the simple gold band on my finger. You remarried, she stated. Yes, I said. He's wonderful. Is he rich? She asked. He makes me happy, I said. That's rich enough. She huffed. You always were sentimental. It makes you weak. Victoria, I said, leaning forward. I own your family legacy. I run a multimillion-dollar business. I pay your bills. If this is weakness, I'd hate to see your version of strength. She went silent. She looked down at her hands, gnarled, empty of the rings she had sold to pay off her debts before I stepped in. Why? She whispered. Why do you help me? Because I'm family, I said. Remember? Legally. She looked up, and for the first time in her life I saw something like regret in her eyes. Or maybe it was just defeat. You won, she whispered. No, I said, standing up. I just didn't lose. Daniel and I expanded the business. We bought a vineyard next to the estate and started producing our own wine. We named the first vintage Revenge. It was a bold red with a bitter finish. It sold out in a week. One evening, sitting on the terrace of the manor looking out over the vineyard, I thought about that dinner table years ago. The potpourri. The judgment. The feeling of being small. I realized that Victoria had given me a gift that night. By rejecting me, she had forced me to find my own power. If she had just let me go to Amalfi, I might still be that quiet graphic designer, desperate for approval. Instead, I was the matriarch of my own life. I raised my glass to the empty chair at the head of the table. To the Amalfi Coast, I whispered. I hear it's beautiful this time of year. James sent a card from Chicago. He was engaged to a librarian. He sounded happy. Chloe's catering business was now the exclusive partner for 3 other venues. We were all thriving in the vacuum Victoria had left behind. The manor was no longer a symbol of exclusion. It was a place of celebration. People laughed there. They danced. They started new lives. The walls that had once held secrets now held joy. I walked inside the house. The grand foyer was filled with flowers for tomorrow's wedding. I touched the mahogany banister. It was warm under my hand. My mother-in-law had said I wasn't family enough. She was right. I wasn't her kind of family. I was something better. I was the kind who built tables longer, not walls higher. And as I turned off the lights, leaving the manor glowing in the moonlight, I knew that was a lesson she had finally learned. The house always wins. But only if you know how to play the game.